Once again, we are back on Ek Bun Soch Ki TTalk Train of Thoughts with a series of an episode with Mr. Vikesh Wallia. It has been a very interesting journey. We have seen his 20 years of his FMCG experience in our earlier episode, and also as far as Times of India, which is current 20 years he was there in that print media. But now another inning of a Mr. Vikesh Wallia into as in corporate governance. Sir, third inning of corporate governance, 2 decades in FMCG, 2 decades in print media and corporate governance. Dil mange more. So, can you please share with the target audience about your role in corporate governance?
Very interesting question you put up to me, because normally if people are in head of business role, they will continue and they'll only look for bigger companies and or probably go in for consulting and advisory roles in that industry. Why did I move from the head of business role for FMCGs and for print media to corporate governance altogether? Although I started my career at a very entry-level position of an executive trainee, in the last 40 years, it became an eye-opener. It broadened my horizon. I was earlier focused on my personal benefits because I used to think that I have to make more money, I have to have higher responsibilities. Then I started thinking about my companies where I was working. So how these companies can be made bigger and more profitable and more pleasant places for people to work. After 40 years, what do you get? You get a vision. You get, a mind to think beyond company. So when you think beyond company, you think of country.
Correct.
Okay. So how my country will grow? Our country will grow only when we scale up.
Correct.
And the biggest requirement for scale up is capital.
Capital, yeah.
Capital will come only to people who have a reputation, who have a credibility of conducting business through fair business practices and in a compliant mode.
Correct.
And following good corporate governance practices.
Correct. Follow all the processes and systems in place, and keeping the relationship between the employees and the management as such.
So I could see that all this is changing. So I have to now move and find an opportunity beyond companies.
Correct.
Okay. And also a time to give back to the society. Because I was superannuating after my 41, 42 years of career at various organizations, 20 years in Times of India, lastly with board position with them in the group companies. And that is when I thought that something different should be identified, and I identified this opportunity. That if the country has to grow, country will need more future directors. Future boards will be different boards. The values, the culture of these organizations will have to be different. So there is a huge opportunity there, and I was not wrong.
Okay.
Because when this thought came to me at that point of time, Companies Act 2013 was coming up. SEBI was becoming stronger.
Correct.
And compliance norms were getting tougher.
So you have to work under those framework that was a major challenge.
So someone had to promote this. Now the accountants and the company secretaries, they were only practicing this. They were not promoting the need. They were not promoting the need. So the opportunity needed someone to promote it. And that is where I got an opportunity to work with Institute of Directors, which was the first association of directors. And at that point of time, later in 2019, although I got into this in 2000 13, 14, after doing my master class of directors with them and learning more about corporate governance, because I'm not a chartered accountant, I'm not a company secretary. But even then, I fell in love with corporate governance and fair business practices. So I decided to join two organizations. One was Council for Fair Business Practices and another one was Institute of Directors.
Okay.
Council for Fair Business Practices, founded by Mr. J.R.D. Tata some 60 years ago, was a different organization, because that time there's no concept of corporate governance. So businesses had to be fair. But today, in the current context, last 30 years, Institute of Directors had done phenomenal work in promoting corporate governance.
And that's a place contributing back to and giving back to a society.
Giving back to the society. And so much and so, because in 2013 also the SDGs, which is the Social Development Goals of the United Nations, were pronounced. And in 2016, India also got into promoting those SDGs, Social Development Goals, 27 social development goals were there. India also started promoting. Mr. Narendra Modi in 2016 launched an excellent document which is called National Guidelines for Responsible Business.
Okay. So you need to
conduct.
Correct.
So it is known as NGRBC, National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct. Till then, our country did not have a document.
Correct.
We had a Ministry of Corporate Affairs, we had a Ministry of Consumer Affairs. They were both at loggerhead with each other.
But this brings more transparency. Like
this was a common document. How are the businesses? And India is probably the only country where such a document exists. I would urge you to go through this document. It's very valuable.
I see.
And I could see, so in 2016, in 2019, just before pandemic, the round table of the global CEO happened, and that brought about another massive change. And that change was redefining the purpose of business.
Okay.
Because ever since business was launched or business activities started happening, the sole purpose of business used to be profit.
Correct.
But this round table of the CEOs, of global CEOs, redefined the purpose of business.
Because only profit you have to come out from that.
You have to focus on the stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders in a business? The employee, the customer,
correct,
okay, the investor,
correct.
So these 6 identified new stakeholders were there, and the purpose of business was redefined from being responsible only to the shareholders to be responsible to the 6 stakeholders. Who are the 6 stakeholders? Employees, consumer, suppliers, the government,
correct,
society, and the environment.
Entire ecosystem. Right?
Yeah. We don't know, indirectly we are taking from the environment, we are taking from the society. So we have to bring gender neutrality. We have to see to it that children are not exploited by the companies, and companies can contribute through CSR and other efforts in the well-being of the society.
So
all these things, you see, when I thought of this in 2013, I was hit by Companies Act 2013, but between 2013 and today, 2022, in 10 years time, this area has blossomed.
Correct.
And today it is the period of ESG. Okay, environment, social, governance.
Right.
So if you are not running your company on the principles of ESG,
correct,
it will be very difficult. Yeah. So you have to talk in terms of sustainability. You have to follow the practices of ESG. So my decision was just right, and therefore I also founded this organization called Board Stewardship, because here the concept of board of directors will not be there.
Okay.
It is the concept of board stewards.
Or relationship between the employees and the management, like how you can manage.
Yeah. So Earlier, the board of directors were only for the shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
In board stewardship, the idea is to promote, to create board stewards. So the highest level of leadership is what?
Correct.
Highest level of leadership is servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be servant to your people?
Correct.
Okay. All that you have to do is you must know in the purpose of your business that clarity should be there, the vision and the mission should be there,
Mm-hmm.
and then you identify the right people in your team.
Correct.
If you have identified right people, if you have identified better people,
Mm-hmm.
then serve them
Correct.
instead of rule them or direct them.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
therefore, this concept of board stewardship.
Okay, I wish you all the best. I'm
Yes.
sure like it's a real great initiative, like the initiative what you have taken in terms of board stewardship. I'm sure like with your experience of 20 years into FMCG and 20 years into the print media and the insights as far as while you were part of an IOD. I think how many you have done the training for various directors, by how many directors you have trained so far?
Well, I have led the training of more than 1,000 directors in India.
I see.
Yeah, existing and aspiring both.
Mm-hmm.
So I have interacted with them, and I've got more than 5,000 people in my personal network with whom on a regular touch basis
Mm-hmm.
about what is happening in the corporate governance space, what is happening in board practices, in board processes.
Correct. Good. I think it was a great insights what we got from Mr. Vikesh Wallia on the corporate governance, and from corporate governance, like being part of an IOD for many years, and like trained various directors. Like Dil Mange Mo shifted more towards as a managing director and editor of an board stewardship. I'm sure it's a very interesting conversation what we are having with Mr. Vikesh Wallia on TTalk, Ek Bun Soch Ki, and this is an exclusive interview with Mr. Vikesh Wallia. And now, in fact, in our next episode, we are going to catch up with Sir on his book on Titans of and Few Business Practices, which is very interesting. I think we are getting a 360-degree of this thing approach of the entire business processes which are there. So, if you like Mr. Vikesh Wallia's conversation, just go to www.ttalk.net, subscribe and like the channel as much as you can. Till then, stay tuned to TTalk. So thank you very much for your valuable time of being part on this TTalk platform. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Shiva. Thank you very much.
Thanks.